Hello, and welcome to the Torah Outreach Program, Erev Shabbos, Burst of Inspiration. Today's Burst of Inspiration is sponsored by Rabbi Moshe Leherfield, Le'iloi Nishmas, Harav Rafael Dovid ben Harav Yehuda Leib Leherfield, Rabbi David Leherfield, who was the rabbi of the Young Israel of North Miami Beach, the senior rabbi of all of North Miami Beach, someone who is missed by all. Parshas Vayeshev, this week's Torah reading, we have an interesting thing that happens here. I've spoken about this before. The cantillation, the note of shalshelis, the note in the Torah reading that goes, forgive me, as I always say, I was not chosen to be a cantor or chazan anywhere. Or even a bokori. That note is, I think, only 4 times in the entire Torah. 3 of them are here in the book of Bereshis, the first book of the Torah. That note, as we'll see momentarily, and I've mentioned other times when that note came up, it's a overcoming, what we call in Hebrew is gavrus, a conquering of a person's inner instinct, inner animalistic drive. We're always told that one of the most important things we can do as a Jew is to overcome the natural wants to do what we know is right. Where do we see that in this week's Torah reading? Yosef, the 11th son of Yaakov. He was 17 years old. And it was decided by his brothers that he was rebellious. And he was trying to take the roots of the Jewish people in the direction that it shouldn't go. And they had to get rid of him. They sold him into slavery. He ended up being sold down to Egypt. He was bought by the chief butcher of Pharaoh because Yosef was so good at what he did. He's so adept and naturally talented, or was just God-given. Potiphar appointed Yosef to be his chief servant. Basically, like the butler we read about in the comic books or in the movies. The butler, the one who's in charge, the chief of staff, who's in charge of everything. He was allowed to take care of everything. Potiphar had very little to do with the ongoings of the house and his finances. That's Yosef's problem, not mine. But there was something else about Yosef. Yosef was known to be gorgeous. He was an extremely good-looking person, very attractive. Women would turn their heads when he walked down the streets. They would follow them with his eyes. Now Potiphar, his wife, also took a liking to this 17-year-old boy. And don't forget, Egypt at the time was known to be the most decadent, immoral society on the planet. And she tried to seduce him. And more to seduce him, to force him. And when it got too much, we see the word vayimo'en. And he refused. And it's not just a word by itself, but it's with that shalshelis. Vayimain, showing an overcoming of instinct, of the base desires of every human being, especially a 17-year-old boy in a society where that type of behavior is a given. It's an immoral society. He's away from his family. There is no one there that would flinch if he did this. Not only that, he should be very angry at what happened to him. What 17-year-old boy wouldn't do that if he was in his shoes? And yet, Vayimain, he refused. Not that he stopped, not that he didn't, but he refused. He fought back. Who was he refusing? Who was he fighting? The wife of Potiphar? Partially. Himself. His own desires, his own animalistic needs. Not to do the wrong thing and to do the right thing. How great was that? We're told that the Red Sea split over 210 years later. The Red Sea split because the coffin of Yosef was being carried by the Jewish people. The sea saw the coffin of Yosef and split because the Midrash tells us that Yosef did something that was not natural. And the sea, therefore, had an obligation to do something that was not natural. And it split. There are only two people that are called tzaddik in the Torah. A lot of righteous people in the Torah. A lot of people were tzaddikim. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. But only two people that we know their title is tzaddik. It was Noach, who was standing against the entire population of his time. Everybody was decadent. Everybody was immoral. And he stood his ground. And Yosef. He fought back. He fought back against himself. He fought back against his nature. And he's called tzaddik. There were greater tzaddikim. Don't tell me Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov was not as great as Yosef. But as I've mentioned before, we're judged according to our own tests. That Shalshelis tells me it wasn't easy. I mean, you don't even need that. His situation, a 17-year-old kid away from his family, it wasn't easy. It was against his nature. And it was that act that later saved the Jewish people. And it's what caused the sea to split. The Shabbos.